Isn't it just lovely to be able to celebrate film in a way, even though you and I are talking over Zoom right now, but being able to enjoy film in the format in which it was intended, or on the, it's so fantastic, and it's so wonderful to have conversations about the films and to be excited about seeing them. And
there's nothing better. There's truly nothing better. I just have to say that you are so masterful in this film. Oh my God, Andrea, like your performance is the most powerful performance I've seen in a really long time. Thank you so much for just gifting us with Leslie. It's truly, I'm always blown away by you. You are just so talented, but this role just, it's something special. So thank you.
She's a really, really special character, and a special film, because it's such a portrait of a sort of non-judgmental portrait of a human.
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier today.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because I loved the scene between Leslie and Sweeney, where he's talking about his ex-wife and how she was an alcoholic as well. But he's saying, I'm not telling you this because you're similar to her. No two people are the same. And I thought that was so profound and important. And let's talk about a little bit about telling stories, especially about addiction, through a non-judgmental kind of singular lens, instead of, clumping addicts into one, thing. I thought that was so profound and so important.
Into their sort of into their, some people call it disease, and some people don't, but into their isms, rather than, putting them in a bracket of that just being their defining, the definition of their entire existence, really, which is, and that's so reductive. And it's something that so many of the 6.5 billion of us, or however many there are, it's something that so many people struggle with. And every single one of those people are totally individual.
Exactly. And everyone's situation is different. Everyone's road to recovery is different. Everyone's and I thought that I just, like the title suggests, this is a dedication to Leslie. This is about Leslie's journeys, and it was just so beautiful. How did this project find you?
Well, actually, to speak to Leslie, or the name of the project, it sort of came about because the screenwriter, Ryan, this is sort of an expression of something that he understands in his own life. And he's given this character who struggles with addiction the opportunity to have perhaps more of a successful end. He's sort of giving the gift of the character being able to come to some sort of peace, which I very much feel happens in this film in lots of ways. You have to go backwards through a hedge before you get to the peace. It doesn't have a very an easy time. But it came to me through Michael Morris, who I worked with on Bloodline. And actually, on Bloodline, my son was played by Owen Teague, who plays my son in this film. And so we're sort of reuniting. He played on Bloodline. I played one of Ben Mendelsohn's, the mother of his child. The sort of I was a very young mom of his child, and there was very little age difference between us. And so we sort of revisited a similar dynamic with completely different characters, Owen and I, on this film. Oh, and Michael brought the project to me. And Michael's, he even just images that he pulled talking about the project were so beautiful. He's English, and he's made a film that is, it's saturated in Americana, really, in so many different levels. And I think it's his perspective has been, and he lives in the US and has done for many, many, many years, but his perspective is really unique. He's able to sort of appreciate the beauty, both in Leslie, in those people who can or can't be around her in her life and in her surroundings, which aren't always obviously full of beauty. That it's there's a lot of grit. And so when he brought the piece to me, I just thought it was such a unique, wonderful, interesting study of a human. And he and I talked, I seem to always be talking about Barbara Loden's Wonder, but he and I talked about that film in the sense that when you watch Barbara Loden's Wonder, you really are with Wanda, this human who's just struggling, not even struggling, she's just living a life, and it's not always easy. And that's very much what Michael wanted for Leslie. And I wouldn't have wanted to play the part really in any other way, because there's so much to love about Leslie, as much as you get so exhausted by her,
I think that's the real beauty of it, is that she is so full of life, and she has such a light inside her that is being dimmed. It's being dimmed by her disease, or it's being dimmed by her addiction. It's being dimmed by those around her who are hurting on their own, and kind of trying to suffocate her light, I should say. But she regains that light. And I think that it's really, she's such a colorful character.
And she becomes, I think, she in a sense, she becomes, for those around her, the marker of whether they're being successful or not in terms of being able to fix her. And that's an unintentional but really heavy weight to bear for a human. And it always kind of leads you back to shame. And
it does. It's a lot of shame. It's a lot of, which I think women in general struggle with. And I think that also there's a lot of like talking about that Americana aspect. There's a lot of pride in this small town there, and I think that with pride is also pain. And I think that it also beautifully shows the contradiction of, like, this country of ours, of how we, sometimes it's so difficult to change or want to change when you feel like you have to be prideful, when you have to take a stance, but really you're not doing yourself any favors. You're not doing those around you any favors. So I think that it's the lens is just so incredible. Let's talk a little bit about two huge themes in this film: compassion and forgiveness. Two things that the world could use more of and more of and more of. And stories like To Leslie help to create a little more of it. And I think it's going to help so many folks to just reflect about their own lives and their own situations. Can you speak a little bit about forgiveness and compassion in this film?
Yeah, I think so often alcoholism is generational. And, none of us can choose which part of the world that we're born into. And it takes very strong sort of individualism to sort of transcend collective thought, so beyond the community that you referenced there, that we're talking about in To Leslie, which is like a biker community that the sort of religious and hellraisers, in the same breath. And there's a lot of judgment, a lot of judgment coming from that community. But in the film, one of the beautiful things about the film that Michael has highlighted, and that Ryan gives us in the screenplay, is that the community heals itself. So there's this really beautiful reminder in the film that, as broken as things can get, we each of us are our own kind of markers again. and we help one another understand ourselves, you know, like through each other, we understand ourselves. And that there's a point where Alison Janney's character, something deep inside of her seems to acknowledge that if she's to reject Leslie, she's really to reject herself and her entire way of life, really. And it's so frustrating when somebody's struggling in the throes of addiction, because they just do not have the choice often. And so to see opportunities being wasted and children being abandoned seems unforgivable. But it's not easy to be human.
It's so true.
It's not easy for any of us to be humans. So weird walking around in these meat suits. With all of these, inexplicable feelings firing off internally like firecrackers constantly, and it's difficult to make sense of them. And not every person, I suppose, in this lifetime even develops the tools to make sense of them, or and for most people don't even have time, because they're working all the time and have 3 kids, to reflect.
To stop and reflect, yeah,
to stop and reflect. And that's not Leslie's journey. Leslie's somebody who does have the time and does have a family and runs away from it, is almost terrified of that intimacy. And full of self-hatred, and the life and soul of the party, hysterically funny, wild, addictive in herself to be around, so yeah, for all of those reasons, it's kind of, I feel like it's impossible with people like that we all have in our lives in some way, whether we love them from a very great distance or very close up. It's impossible not to have compassion and ultimately, eventually, forgiveness with those people when you're in relationship with them, because it's not. It's so clear that really their intentions are not in line with their actions.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautifully said. I think too, like you brought up Leslie's relationship with her son James, which is such a complicated and painful one. But I think what the film does also is it shows that, although family relationships, especially between mother and child, can be complicated, can be full of that pain, there's still an unbreakable bond there. And it's still, that relationship is so ingrained in love, and it's this unspoken love that really, I think, saves Leslie and saves James. They obviously both need each other in their lives. And I don't want to give anything away, but that scene at the end at Leslie's diner with Allison Janney and then James coming in, I think it just encapsulates all of that so beautifully and so well. That whole sequence in itself is such a gift, I think. A gift for Leslie, but also a gift for us, and a gift for those struggling with either addiction or just straying from family. There's so many, I think also, like, the addiction part aside, which is obviously a huge part of this film, I think that a lot of folks, especially of, the last 4 years, if there's been differences that have torn families apart, I think that this, again, it plays into that forgiveness element, that it's not always easy to forgive. And sometimes people don't deserve to be forgiven, but sometimes, the healing that the person that both people can get and give each other through that. And we see that in that moment. And it's just, such a gift.
Yeah. And perhaps it was never for us to forgive them. Perhaps it was never us to, perhaps the forgiveness, it doesn't need to come from us. It's such a difficult thing when families are estranged in any way. It's such a deeply, deeply painful thing, and it seems like such a natural and healthy instinct to long for your family, and it is. That's exactly what it is. And sometimes, you'll long for that relationship, even if it's very wonky, because the instinct in you is totally natural to want it. And I feel like Leslie and her son, both, she craves a son and he craves a mother, and that part of that instinct is actually really is full of love and is so natural and healthy. It doesn't always go well, there's a lot of disappointment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Andrea, just congratulations on this film and your, again, powerful, masterful performance. Thank you so much. I can't wait for the rest of the world to see it. I know it's going to, truly, I think, change lives and help those to reflect. And that's the best that we can hope for in storytelling. So thank you for giving that to us, and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's been so lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, it's always so lovely to see you, and hopefully one day in person.
An actual person. Woohoo!
Woo!